welcome once again to Caleb Blake's Books Today. I have another book review for you, and that is for book 15 in the Star Wars The New Jedi Order series, which is Force Heretic 1 Remnant by Sean Williams and Shane Dix. So of course, this is the 15th book in the New Jedi Order series, the first book in the Force Heretic trilogy, the first trilogy and only trilogy within the New Jedi Order series, coming in pretty late into the series. Also written by two authors, which is something that I'm pretty sure is also a first for the New Jedi Order, which is interesting. And I've been really looking forward to reading this one because I'm really kind of looking forward to being done with this series. Not that I'm not enjoying it at all. It's not like I just want to be done with it, but it's like I want to be able to have this series under my belt so I can move on to later series in the Star Wars Legends timeline, which is very exciting to me. And I really love this series a lot, so I'm excited to see how it concludes. And so I am steadily working my way towards that and hope to finish the series sometime this summer. And I was looking forward to this one. I was really interested to see how this trilogy would play out, because again, like I said, it's the only trilogy in the New Jedi Order. It's the only one written by two authors as far as I'm aware. And I was interested to see how that would work and what the kind of overarching storyline of this trilogy would be. I had heard this one get pretty mixed reception. The trilogy in general, I think, has gotten some pretty mixed reception from people. I've heard a lot of people say like it's not bad, but it's one of the lesser sets of books in the New Jedi Order. So I was kind of curious what I would think of it, if I would also agree with that, or if I'd maybe find something to appreciate that others don't, or things like that. Unfortunately, I would have to say, at least for this first book, I know I've talked to some people who say the later 2 and 3 books are better. But this one, for me, didn't really do much, and I would probably say this is one of the lesser books in the series for me. And unfortunately, I don't think I have a huge amount to talk about with this book, so this will probably be a pretty short review. But to get started with some good stuff in this book, because this book does have some very cool things in it that I really enjoyed. First of all, there's some really cool connections to other Star Wars Legends books. This one in particular hints towards connections to the book Rogue Planet, as well as the book The Truce at Bakura, among probably some other ones I'm sure, but those are the two major ones which I really like. And it hints that Truce at Bakura will be important for the next 2 books in the trilogy, which I'm really excited about. Didn't love that book necessarily, but you know, I think it's cool to get these different connections, and that's one of the advantages I think of having read some of the other books. I really enjoyed some of the character work in this book. There weren't really any major standouts to me in this book, although I did, if I were to point at any, it would probably be Jaina Solo, who is rarely a standout character for me. I tend to not, like, I don't dislike Jaina, but she never really is a standout to me, but I enjoyed her in this book. I also really enjoyed Pelayan in this book. Pelayan is one of my personal favorite Legends characters, and he gets a decent role in this book, a decently sized role, and I really enjoyed seeing him in here. He has a particularly awesome moment right at the end of the book. If you've read the book, you probably know the one I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but he has a really great moment at the very end of this book, and it was like one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. I loved it, and I love Pelayan in general. Tahiri was also good in this book. I really enjoyed her. There's also another character named Saba who was kind of interesting. And things like that, and everyone else was done well, of course, too. You know, you have Han and Leia, who are good, Luke and Mara, who are good. Nominor is pretty prominent in this book. He's like the most prominent Yuuzhan Vong character in this book, and he was good too. You know, all the characters were good. Those were just a few more stand out than the rest to me, although there were none that I was like absolutely like over the moon about, except maybe Pelayan, because I really like him. And I just think this book had a lot of good moments in it, both in terms of just individually, like that one moment with Pelayan I was talking about, but there's also some really interesting setups for the rest of the trilogy, particularly with a certain thing that I think it's Tahiri who finds it. I think, if I remember correctly, I may be completely off with that, but there's a particular thing that she finds which is hinted to be important, and I'm curious to see how that's going to go. I'm curious to see how the connections with Truce at Bakura are going to play out. I'm curious how the connections with Rogue Planet are going to play out, because that's still even ongoing at the end of this book as well. There's lots of hints towards the rest of the trilogy that I'm looking forward to seeing played through. It's just that a lot of that stuff doesn't really come into play extensively in this book. It's a lot of setup. So setup that I'm excited about, but not a whole lot of stuff in this book specifically that I'm like, ooh, that's really cool. Because all the stuff in here is like, ooh, that's gonna be really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. But this book in specific didn't do quite as much for me. I also the writing style of this book is interesting. It's a writing style that I can sometimes enjoy, but I think ultimately detracted from this book for me, which is this book doesn't have any chapters in it. Of course, you jump between different points of view, but it doesn't have any specific like chapter markers or anything like that. It comes in like 3 or 4 parts across the whole book, and that's it. And that's something that I can enjoy. Like I love Terry Pratchett's Discworld books, and he does this, as far as I'm aware, in most of his Discworld books as well. But I think that works a bit better in those books than it does here. In this book, it made it feel really weird to me, and I'm not sure how else to explain it. But I tend to prefer having like concrete chapters rather than not in general anyway. I just find it helpful for me structurally. But that is also just an interesting thing about this book that I thought was really unique because that hasn't been done in the series yet. Not much else to really talk about with this book, I think. The setup for it was interesting. The setup for this is like they're trying to find Zonoma Sakat, which is the planet from Rogue Planet, which is an interesting setup, but that doesn't really go anywhere in this book. I assume that's going to play into the other 2 books in the trilogy. So again, cool setups, but not a lot in this book itself that was interesting. There was some good action, there was some good character stuff, there was a few really cool scenes that I enjoyed, but overall this book just didn't really have much to it for me. It felt like a lot of setup for things and not a whole lot of stuff interesting that it did on its own. So I'm looking forward to continuing this trilogy for sure, because I think the things this book sets up are really cool. But again, this book doesn't have much in its own right that really draws me into it. Maybe my hindsight will make this a little bit better once I finish the trilogy, maybe, if it really sticks the landing, but we'll see. As for right now, this one didn't do a huge amount for me. So as far as a rating out of 10 that I would give Remnant, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It was fine. It wasn't great. Just had a few good things in it that I liked, but otherwise didn't do much for me aside from making me interested in the future, which is good, but doesn't really help the book in this specific case. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. If you have read this book before, let me know your thoughts on it and your thoughts on the trilogy as a whole. If you think the trilogy does stick the landing, if you don't think it does, what you think of it in comparison to the rest of the series so far. This is probably one of my least favorite books in New Jedi Order, so we'll see how I feel about the trilogy. So that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.